I'm going to take an infamously contentious topic, vaccines, and use it as an example of how frequencies work. I'm coming from a perspective where everything is energy, everything is vibration, everything is frequency. So I'm not going to be defending one or the other in this video. Instead, we're going to experiment and explore the spectrum of frequencies that are in our universe and how words have sort of major impact on how we believe things, our thoughts, and how we shape our own reality. So, when you are for or against something, you are naturally in a polarity. And if you're on a polarity, you're usually in the lower, what we label as the lower frequencies, the denser ones. The denser ones are hatred, resentment, fear, anger. It's not to throw shade on them. We all come from higher places, higher frequencies, bliss, love, joy, and we choose to experience a wider spectrum of frequencies which include those denser ones. If you imagine the piano key, there is nowhere like planet Earth and being a human in the universe and to experience such a wide range of frequencies. This is why it's quite unique and special to be a human. And we're special because we can access both the higher vibrations and the lower ones. We can look at the lower frequencies from a higher frequency perspective. Anger, for instance, can give us drive, impetus to do something. Let's just imagine ourselves on a higher frequency realm where there's no resistance. We create with our thoughts, our will, anything we want just comes to us. Life gets a little bit boring. We get a little bit demotivated when we're not challenged. Imagine playing a video game. You just go wherever you want. You don't have something to test yourself against. Would you play that video game? Or would you just think, maybe I want one where I can learn some skills, go into a different level, into a different world. So that's the beauty of limitation, and that's the beauty of the lower frequencies. So watch what I did there. Yeah, there are lower frequencies, anger, hatred, which most of us claim we never want to feel, but actually they're super important for us to experience, because we can't really experience the highest form of joy if we haven't first felt its opposite. So that's what Earth is all about. It is a very contrasty, polarizing place. However, at this time in its spiral, humanity is being given an opportunity to be less trapped in those lower frequencies, which tends to be the third dimension. Dog eat dog, fight or flight, competition, all of that stuff. We're given an opportunity to transmute them after we've experienced them, and it's important to experience them. They give us wisdom, but transmute them so that we can experience life on Earth from a higher vibrational operating system, essentially. And sometimes we need to go down the wrong paths in order to be stabilized on the right one. Everything is potential. The universe at large is limitless, so it also has to go down those what we call darker routes. So how do vaccines come into this? Well, they are very polarizing, aren't they? There's two camps. You're either kind of like, well, maybe three actually. You're kind of really for them, you're really against them. Or maybe you're in the middle and you're a bit suspicious, but you kind of just want to get on with your life. But so I need my notes for this one, because I want to get it right. Okay, so let's try this. We're going to unite both camps by asking this question. What do people who are against vaccines and those who support them have in common? Well, they both want to be healthy, they both want to protect their children, they both want to avoid suffering, and they both want to live long, healthy lives. It's just the path each wants to take is different. That's all. But difference isn't wrong. Earth is our realm of contrast. It's how we learn. We know light only because we've seen dark. We understand harmony because we've lived through discord. The goal is never to eliminate difference, it's to move through it without hostility. We elevate when we stop needing everyone to agree, when we accept that different souls have different lessons to learn and different ways of expressing those lessons. So when we come from the space of neutrality rather than being polarized against one another, and sort of have the space to carry two opposing opinions with curiosity and respect, we've reached a level of peace there, rather than be in those camps of fear and divisiveness. So this is how we start to stay in resonance and how we rise. Let's just say you have one person who fully believes in the power of science, in human ingenuity, in the white coat. They place all their faith into medicine, into a vaccine. To them, the body is fragile and modern medicine is not. That trust alone activates a kind of immunity because belief, especially when it's held deeply, is biologically potent. In their case, the vaccines may work, in part because they believe it will. Belief is everything, as you see in sort of all placebo tests. This is the belief in something that makes anything work or not. What's physically there doesn't make a difference. Now let's take another person. This person believes that being injected with aluminium, mercury, aborted monkey kidney cells, polysorbate 80 and other substances might harm them. A nervous system tenses, even if they're unaware of it consciously. Their body perceives a potential violation, just as it would with a bee sting or a snake bite, where our bodies are programmed to expect sort of alien or potentially bad bacteria or viruses to enter the mouth, go straight to the gut. So 90% of the immune system, working in conjunction with our gut bacteria, is placed in the gut. That's our first line of defense. We've got some sort of microbes and immune cells on our skin and also our aura around us. But our body doesn't really expect or want to have a substance go straight into the bloodstream. So we're naturally fearful of scorpions and tarantulas and snakes because we don't want it getting in there. We might get poisoned. So it's a perfectly natural reaction to have to something man-made like a vaccine. It's triggering the same fear response. And this person may experience a reaction not solely because of the ingredients, but because of the internal story, the frequency of fear that's running in the background. Now let's take this onto the level of language. Every word holds a frequency, just like every object, animal, human, and thought holds frequency. A book holds a vibration and certain resonance. It only truly lands with readers whose consciousness matches its tone. And when that book is passed on, it carries the imprint of both the author and the person who's read it. It's a subtle fusion of memory and meaning. I instantly have had some intuitive people tell me to get a couple of books out of my space, and they knew they weren't even here. They knew exactly which ones, but what they didn't know was that those books weren't mine. They were sort of like lent to me, so they were carrying somebody else's frequency. For some reason, that frequency didn't belong in my space. So as soon as I got rid of it, it was almost like having a whip around of sage. It just sort of cleared the atmosphere. We've got to be really careful about the items that we take on, especially if they're handed down. They're absorbing the person who owned them, essentially, the space they were in. So, words, like objects, carry energy, and the more they're spoken, reshaped, reinterpreted, the more they mutate. Their frequency becomes unstable, often shifting from what they originally meant, and wildly sort of shifting depending on who's speaking and who's listening. Now, let's take the word vaccine. On the surface, it traces back to the Latin vacca, meaning, or vassa, I'm not sure, meaning cow. A reference to the cowpox virus used in the first smallpox inoculation. But step back and listen to how the word feels in your body. See the images it calls forward, depending on your history, your belief, your trauma, your education. For some, this word, vaccine, is going to evoke safety, progress, and protection. For others, it's going to vibrate with fear, violation, and coercion. It's the same word carrying two different frequencies. And so, just like food, just like medicine, words have to be digested, assimilated, questioned. And not every word nourishes every person in the same way. Now, watch how, so we've briefly gone on to the word, how the frequency of it depends on the person speaking it and the listener, the subjectivity of it. Watch how the frequency of the word vaccine shifts as I move now through different statements. I'm going to read them. Thanks to human ingenuity, vaccines were a giant leap for humanity, saving hundreds of thousands of lives and eradicating deadly diseases so we could all live longer. That's quite a high vibrational statement, if you believe it. It speaks of progress, safety, and gratitude. High vibrational frequencies. It soothes the nervous system, restores a sense of order from chaos. Now feel the energy shift. Vaccines have never been rigorously tested like another pharmaceutical. They've never undergone double-blind placebo-controlled trials the way all other medication must. Watch what happens in your body now. You might feel tension, outrage, defensiveness, or disbelief. A part of you might suddenly classify this as conspiratorial. Another part might be curious. Either way, the vibration has changed just because I've put the word in a different set of sentences. Now here's another. Cancer was practically unheard of until the early 1900s, when doctors began noticing strange multiplying lumps in patients. Soon after, smallpox vaccines became widespread. And on every single pamphlet, on every single vaccine, is the same sentence over and over again. No cancer studies have ever been done on a vaccine. Again, can you feel that frequency drop? Depending on your framework, might spark fear, skepticism, sense of revelation. Either way, information is changing the energy all of the time. Now watch polarity in action. Let's take the stance for a minute of a person who does not agree with vaccines. And they say, my kids won't be playing with your vaccinated kids. I don't want them catching vaccine shedding. And now we're going to go over to this person who believes in vaccines. My kids won't be playing with any unvaccinated kids. I don't want them getting sick. Notice how they're both on the same frequency. Both coming from a state of fear and divisiveness, not unity, not acceptance of a difference of opinion. And really, the ascension in humanity is all about frequency. It's nothing to do with the physical world. The physical world is just projected beliefs, all of it. So we've got to watch sometimes when we get into a certain camp, because humans can tend to become quite righteous and then alienating against people with different opinions. So yeah, and each statement was emotionally charged, conflict heavy. But we've all felt these things, and we came to Earth to feel these things, but we didn't come here to stay in them. We're destined to ascend from the conflict, to witness polarity but not get trapped inside it, to understand that opinions hold frequencies, and those frequencies shape our reality, our bodies, our beliefs, our collective future. So the invitation is never to agree or disagree, it's to listen differently. and feel beneath the surface of what's being said to explore not only what we believe, but why we believe it and what frequency that belief is holding us in. Now, so a higher vibrational stance would sound like, let's take the person who doesn't believe in vaccines. Rather than say, my kid's not playing with yours because I don't want shedding, what if they said this? I respect your choice to vaccinate. I believe my child's immune system is strong and intelligent. It doesn't need medication or intervention, so my child can absolutely play with yours, even if there's some shedding. I trust that her body will adapt. It might even make her stronger. That's way higher vibrational. It's peaceful, isn't it? It's uniting. And then let's look at the person who loves vaccines. Okay, I respect your trust in your child's immune system. I also believe human intervention can support us, and that nature, while beautiful, can be harsh. But I'm confident that the vaccine is working as intended, so even if your child is a walking Dalmatian of measles, I've got no fear. Let them play. Completely different frequency. There's no judgment, no panic, no righteousness, no fear. Instead, there's unity and sovereignty. They're both making their own choices. Mutual respect. And that they don't need to control one another, and choosing differently is not a threat. Because at the core of everything, free will is the only true rule that exists on this planet. And we all choose from moment to moment who we want to be, what frequency we want to hold. And when we drop our need to be right, we rise into the only thing that heals everything, unspeakable inner peace. And so the only issue I have with this subject is how sealed off it's become. It is quite polarized, but also like people are afraid to speak about it because they don't want to offend somebody, or they don't want to lose their friends, because they know how polarizing it can be when fear is involved. But and the science really isn't settled on it, because the science is never settled. Any true scientist knows that science evolves by questioning itself, by breaking apart old belief systems to make way for new understanding. So whenever someone sort of says, oh no, we're certain on that, I do think you have a right to be suspicious, because everything should always be questioned. And if we think back to the flat Earth era, it wasn't the ignorant who resisted change, it was the most educated at the time, the most indoctrinated, because it's very hard to change your reality. Science at its best is meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant to be probed, picked apart, checked from every angle, and repeated under scrutiny. And so the question becomes, why with vaccines are we not allowed to ask questions? What is it that we might find? But the very idea of vaccines is vital, not just biologically, but symbolically. They've become one of the first major thresholds where humanity begins to question, who has authority over my body, over my health, and over my reality? They've acted as catalysts, not only for immunity, but for inquiry. They invite people to ask those deeper questions, to challenge consensus, to ultimately reclaim that sense of personal autonomy. Because think about it, if vaccines never existed, what would have sparked such widespread questioning? How else would we have collectively rehearsed the courage to think differently, to speak up, or to stand apart from the crowd? That's why I don't believe vaccines are dark. I believe in a strange and paradoxical way they are light. They've sparked something, and what they've sparked is awakening. Now notice how you feel after hearing that. It offers a very high vibrational perspective rooted in curiosity, empowerment, and expansion. In contrast, most conspiratorial sort of stories tend to spiral into fear, division, and distrust. Lower vibrations that often leave us feeling like victims, stuck and heavy. Now, yeah, that's it. So, did it? Kind of a difficult one to explain, that one, but cool.